My name is Nadia Keller. I'm 24. If you walked into my parents' house on any given holiday, you would think they only had one daughter, my sister. Emma is 28, the older one, the golden child. I was the afterthought, the kid in the background of family photos, half cut off at the edge, while Emma stood center frame, everyone's arms wrapped around her. Growing up, it was never just in my head, no matter how many times I tried to convince myself I was being dramatic. The pattern was always there. Emma got the better end of everything: the bigger bedroom, the new clothes, the nicer bike, the attention. When she messed up, it was, she's just going through a phase. When I messed up, it was, Nadia, what's wrong with you? It felt like she had this invisible shield over her, one that deflected any blame or consequence. I remember once, when I was 16, she crashed my cheap little car into a fence because she'd borrowed it without asking. My parents were furious at me. If you hadn't parked it so close to the driveway, she wouldn't have hit it, my mom snapped. I just stared at her, trying to process how that sentence even made sense. Emma stood behind her, arms folded, chin lifted like she was the victim. That was just one moment. There were hundreds. By the time I turned 18, I knew I had to leave. I felt like I was suffocating in a house where I was always the problem, never the person. Moving out felt less like a normal step into adulthood and more like escaping a slow, quiet disaster. I found a tiny apartment 2 cities away. The walls were thin, the plumbing whined at night, and the heater was moody, but it was mine. For the first time, I could hear my own thoughts without someone telling me they were wrong. I worked, paid my own bills, focused on therapy and my mental health. And for a while, it was actually peaceful. But Emma wasn't done with me. After I left, she started feeding my parents stories about me, like she enjoyed controlling my relationship with them even when I was gone. She told them I was doing drugs, that I was an alcoholic, that I was partying all night with strangers. None of it was true. I was willing, begging even, to take a drug test, to show them texts from my boss, screenshots of my bank statements, anything. But my parents didn't hesitate. They believed her, not me. My mother's exact words: Emma wouldn't lie about something like this. That was the moment something finally broke inside me. I went no contact 2 full years. No calls, no texts, nothing on birthdays or holidays. I blocked their numbers. I blocked Emma. And honestly, it felt good. Lonely sometimes, yes. But the kind of lonely that's quiet and clean, not the kind that makes you feel dirty and unwanted in your own family. In that time, I made a life. I poured myself into my job. And I fell in love. I met Ethan at work. Tall, calm, the type who actually listens when you talk. He never made me feel like I had to compete for space in the conversation. We dated, laughed, fought, made up, grew together. We built something solid. For a while, I pretended my parents didn't exist. They certainly pretended I didn't. Then COVID hit. The world shut down, and so did my resolve. Weeks into lockdown, I got a text from an unknown number. Nadia, it's Mom. Your dad is in the hospital. My heart dropped. For all their flaws, they were still my parents. I don't live by treat people how they treated you. I live by treat people how you want to be. And I didn't want to be someone who ignored a sick parent in a hospital bed. So I called. Then I visited, masked, gloved, terrified, and stood by my dad's side while machines beeped. He wasn't dying, but he was scared. For once, he looked at me like he needed me. That was the doorway back in. We started talking again, slowly. Awkward phone calls, short check-ins. My mother cried on the phone once, saying she missed me. I didn't know what to do with that. Emma wasn't happy, of course. She'd lost her favorite narrative, that I was the unstable one who abandoned the family. Then, a new piece got added to the puzzle: money. My parents' jobs took a hit during the pandemic. They were struggling to pay bills. When they finally told me, I hesitated. Ethan squeezed my hand across the table and just said, "Do what you can, but don't set yourself on fire to keep them warm." I helped. I covered some bills. I sent money when I could. Part of it was compassion, sure, but part of it was this quiet, stubborn hope that if I showed up where Emma didn't, they'd finally see me as equal. I'm not proud of that logic, but that's where my head was. And it seemed to work. Whenever Emma tried to stir the pot, subtle digs over the phone, snide comments about me being over-dramatic, my parents pushed back. They'd say things like, "Well, Nadia is the one helping us right now. You don't get to talk about her like that." I knew it wasn't pure love. They were scared I'd stop helping if they turned on me again. But for the first time in my life, they were choosing me in any way. I took it, even though it was a twisted kind of victory. Meanwhile, things with Ethan were solid. After our 4th anniversary, he took me to the little park where we'd had our first awkward picnic. The air was chilly. He was nervous, so nervous he dropped the ring box in the grass. We both started laughing, and when he finally got down on one knee, I didn't even let him finish the sentence before I said yes. For the first time ever, my life felt like it was actually coming together. Decent job, healing relationship with my parents, a fiancé who loved me. And then Emma found a way to ruin that too. When she found out we were engaged, the first thing out of her mouth was, "Why do you think you should be getting married so young when I'm not even married yet?" I blinked at her through my phone screen during a video call. "What does your relationship status have to do with mine?" Her lips twisted. "It just looks weird, Nadia. The younger sister rushing ahead like that. Maybe you should wait. You barely know how to be an adult." This from the woman whose relationships never made it past a year. I bit my tongue. Ethan later joked that she sounded like a villain from a soap opera. I laughed, but there was a knot in my stomach that wouldn't leave. Still, I planned the wedding. A weekend ceremony so everyone could make it. Despite everything, I sent invitations to my parents and to Emma. I told Ethan, I want them there. I don't want to look back at the pictures and see a giant empty space where my family should have been. He looked at me for a long moment. "Okay," he said softly, "but if they hurt you again, we do it differently next time." The wedding day came. My dress was simple but beautiful. My hands shook as my friend zipped me up. People buzzed around the venue, flowers being placed, music tested, seats being adjusted. My stomach was a mess of butterflies and dread. I kept checking my phone. No messages from Mom. No, "We're on our way," from Dad. No snarky message from Emma. "Maybe traffic," my maid of honor suggested. "Yeah," I said, forcing a smile. "Probably traffic." 30 minutes passed. The ceremony start time ticked closer. The coordinator asked gently, "Do we need to wait for anyone?" "My parents, I said. My voice sounded small, even to me. "They're coming." I believed that. I needed to believe that. Then, right as the music was about to start, my friend walked in with her phone in her hand and her face pale. "Nadia," she whispered, I think you need to see this." She turned the screen toward me. It was Emma's social media post. A bright, perfectly edited photo of my parents sitting at her dining table. Plates of food, glasses raised, big smiles. The caption, "Sunday family lunch with my favorites. Wouldn't want to be anywhere else." The timestamp, 20 minutes ago? They hadn't called. They hadn't texted. They just chose her. Again. On my wedding day. Something inside me went very, very quiet. I stared at the photo, at my mother's smile, at my father's hand on Emma's shoulder like she was the only daughter he'd ever had. In that moment, standing there in my wedding dress, I knew one thing with absolute clarity. This was the last time they were ever going to do this to me. What I didn't know yet was just how far I'd be willing to go to make sure of it. When the ceremony music finally started, I walked down the aisle with a smile that didn't belong to me. My legs felt distant, like they were operating on muscle memory, not joy. Ethan stood waiting, eyes soft, unaware of what I had just seen. I didn't tell him, not yet. I couldn't shatter this moment, not when he had done nothing wrong. We said our vows. We exchanged rings. People clapped. We kissed. The photographer snapped pictures I knew I would never frame. And afterward, when the guests drifted toward the reception tables, I finally exhaled. My chest hurt from holding everything in. Ethan brushed a strand of hair from my face. "Are you okay?" he whispered. "You look pale." I swallowed hard. "We'll talk later, I promise." He nodded gently. He always trusted my timing. It was one of the reasons I loved him. We got through the night. I laughed when people toasted. I hugged relatives. I thanked friends for coming. But my heart was somewhere else, stuck in that photo on Emma's page. When the last guest left, Ethan and I walked to the bridal suite. The door closed behind us, and the silence pressed in on me. I handed him my phone without a word. He looked at the photo, his jaw tightened, hard. "They didn't even call you," he murmured. "No," I said, "they didn't." For a long moment, he said nothing. Then he pulled me into his arms. "I'm so sorry, Nadia. You didn't deserve that. Not today, not ever." His embrace cracked something inside me, the last thin layer of denial I'd been clinging to. I cried into his chest, finally letting the humiliation spill out. After we checked out the next morning, After the honeymoon, after I'd had enough time to process, I sent the message I'd been crafting in my head since the moment I saw that photo. It said, "I will never consider you my parents again. You've chosen Emma over me my entire life, and you made it clear on my wedding day. Do not contact me again." I hit send. I felt my heart thud in my chest like I'd kicked open a locked door. For a few hours, there was silence. Then the messages started pouring in. My mom, "Nadia, you're acting childish. We didn't know you'd be so sensitive." My dad, "You'll regret this. Family is family." Emma, "Grow up. It was just lunch. You're ridiculous." I stared at the screen, numb. They weren't sorry. They weren't even confused. They genuinely believed I was the problem. I ignored them for days while Ethan and I were on our honeymoon. For the first time, I could breathe without the weight of trying to earn people's love. But when we returned home, the onslaught began again. Comments, calls, messages, notifications from fake accounts, everything. My parents were furious because I had also stopped paying their bills. Of course they were. Emma never lifted a finger financially, and now, without me, they were struggling again. Actions have consequences. Update 1. After a week of silence, I finally posted about what happened online, partly to vent, partly to see if I really was an a-hole like they claimed. Strangers validated me more than my family ever had. But that small piece didn't last long, because one afternoon my neighbor texted me, "Your mother has been sitting outside your door for 2 hours." I froze. When I got home, she was there, eyes puffy, hair frizzy, clutching her purse like a shield. Against my better judgment, I unlocked the door. She stormed inside. "You are unreasonable," she snapped. The moment the door clicked shut. "You made us the villains. Just because you got married doesn't mean Ethan is your only family." I stared at her, stunned at the volume, the anger, the utter lack of remorse. "You were supposed to be with us," she continued. "Your sister needed us. That lunch was important." "It was my wedding," I said quietly. She rolled her eyes. "At your age, you're barely an adult. Emma needed us more." There it was. The truth. The hierarchy. The order of worth. Emma first. Emma always first. Me, the leftover. I felt something calm slip into my voice. "Tell me one time, just one, when you chose me over her." She opened her mouth. Nothing came out. So I kept going. "When she took my car and crashed it, you blamed me. When she lied about drugs, you believed her. When I moved out, you never visited. When I helped you financially, you thanked her for being supportive. When I invited you to the most important day of my life, you sat at her table instead." My mother's face twisted. "Stop being dramatic." "I'm done being dramatic," I said softly. "I'm done being anything for you. Unless you can admit what you've done, all of it, don't contact me again." She called me crazy. She said I was brainwashed by Ethan. She said I was disrespectful. So I pointed to the door. "Leave." She did, and I didn't cry this time. Update 3. Days passed. My father tried calling. I ignored him. Emma sent messages telling me to grow up and stop overreacting. She said, "Sometimes family sacrifices for each other." I laughed out loud when I read that, because the only person who ever sacrificed in that family was me. I finally replied, "I sacrificed for years. You just never noticed, because you were always on the receiving end." And then I blocked her. Ethan and I sat on the couch that night, legs tangled, the TV humming softly. "Do you feel guilty?" he asked gently. I thought about it. About the years I spent begging for scraps. About the way they still refused to see me. "No," I said. "For the first time, I feel free." He kissed my forehead. "Good." I leaned against him, breathing in the quiet, the safety. I always thought losing my parents would feel like a disaster, but instead it felt like finally stepping out of a burning house I'd been told was home, and choosing finally not to go back into the flames. Ethan once told me that when something finally breaks, it doesn't shatter in one loud moment the way people imagine. Sometimes it breaks quietly, like a line of hairline cracks, spreading until the whole thing simply can't hold its own weight anymore. That's what the weeks after my mother's visit felt like. Quiet breaking. For the first time since childhood, my phone stayed silent. No demands, no guilt trips, no reminders to send money. But silence has an echo. It has a weight. On the third week, Ethan and I were having dinner when my phone buzzed with a number I didn't recognize. He looked up. "You don't have to answer." "I know," I said, and I picked it up anyway. "Hello?" A man cleared his throat. "Is this Nadia Keller?" "Yes." "This is Officer Randall from the County Police Department. We're calling as a courtesy. Your parents listed you as an emergency contact." My heart dropped. For a moment, I couldn't breathe. "What happened?" I whispered. "Your mother filed a report." She claimed she was financially abandoned by her adult child. She expected assistance. But he paused, voice shifting, careful. We reviewed the situation. You are under no legal obligation. Her case has been dismissed. I closed my eyes. Of course she'd do that. Not to reconnect, not to apologize. To punish. The officer continued, sounding almost sympathetic. She also mentioned emotional distress. We advised her this is a civil family matter, not criminal. I'm letting you know because she seemed adamant. I exhaled slowly. Thank you for informing me. I don't wish to engage with them. After we hung up, I stared at the table, the steam rising from my untouched food. Ethan reached across and took my hand. You okay? I should be, I murmured, but I'm not sure how I'm supposed to feel. He squeezed gently. However you feel is valid. 2 days later, the real twist came. A message arrived from my father. Not from his number, from Emma's. It was a photo of a hospital hallway and the text. Mom collapsed. Happy now? My stomach twisted. Not because I believed the accusation, but because it was so painfully predictable. Even now, even in a hospital, Emma found a way to make herself the victim and me the villain. For a whole minute, I felt frozen between two versions of myself. The daughter who used to run whenever her parents needed anything, and the woman who'd finally learned she deserved better. Ethan placed a hand on my back. You don't owe them your life, he said softly. Not anymore. I nodded, letting that truth settle into my bones. Still, I typed a reply. Not emotional, not cruel. Just a boundary carved into stone. I hope she receives the care she needs. I will not be visiting. Please do not contact me again unless it's about genuine accountability, not blame. Emma saw it immediately. The typing bubble appeared, disappeared, appeared again, then vanished. She never replied. A week passed, then 2. One morning, I opened my email to find a message with the subject line, from Dad. My chest tightened. I clicked it. The message was short. Nadia, your mother was discharged. She is still angry. But I'm not. I think I finally understand. Emma has always been easier. You were stronger, so we assumed you needed less. We were wrong. I was wrong. I hope someday we can talk. Not as who we used to be, but who we are now. Take care of yourself, Dad. I read it twice, 3 times. It wasn't perfect. It wasn't enough to erase decades of damage. But it was honest. The first honest thing he'd said to me in years. Ethan looked at me with concern. What does it say? I handed him my phone. When he finished reading, he nodded. That's something. Yeah, I whispered. It is. But here's the twist. I didn't reply, not because I was angry, but because for the first time, I wasn't desperate for their approval, their acknowledgement, their love. I finally understood that healing doesn't always mean reconnecting. Sometimes healing is choosing silence, choosing distance, choosing yourself. 3 months later, Ethan and I moved into a small townhouse on the other side of the city. Light poured through the windows every morning. We painted the walls ourselves, white, soft gray, warm beige. Colors that didn't remind me of childhood. Colors that felt like starting new. One afternoon, while unpacking, Ethan wrapped his arms around my waist. You know, he murmured, you never told me what you plan to do if your father reaches out again. I leaned back into him. I'll listen, I said. If he ever wants to talk, not to justify, not to defend, but to understand, I'll listen. But I won't chase anymore. And your mother? I shook my head. She still thinks I'm the villain in a story she refuses to rewrite. Ethan kissed the side of my head. Then you get to write a new one. I smiled softly. I already did. And here's the final twist. The one I didn't see coming. Losing my parents didn't destroy me. It freed me. Because sometimes the ending of one story is the beginning of the one you were meant to live all along. And mine finally feels like mine.